Freljordian welcome.
Yes, a true Freljordian welcome. Welcome to Voices of the Old Ones. I'm Jankie, and I'm joined by my co-host Gomez.
Hello, that's me.
And today we have a very special guest on. Hello to Mr. Shawn Main.
Hello, nice to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. We
Yeah,
really
indeed, thank you.
our little podcast.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure.
For those of you who don't know, Shawn Main works at Riot as the is your official title principal designer, correct?
Principal game designer, yep.
Yeah. So first of all, I guess the most important question to ask is, what does that entail? What does a day in the life of Shawn Main look like?
So that's an interesting question. So for principal is just kind of a matter of level. But I had been for a long time operating as the lead set designer, so I was kind of overseeing the work there.
Right.
About 6 months ago, 8 months ago, I've lost all sense of time here in the pandemic. Yeah.
I'm sure most of us have in this time.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. But I switched over, and so now I've been working more on labs, and so particularly Lab of Legends has been something that's been a huge project here that we've dedicated a lot of my time to, a couple other designers as well. And labs is interesting because it's largely like a little R&D studio almost within the wider game of lore. So there's a lot more experimentation we get to do. There's a lot more like flying by the seat of our pants with a small team that has, the artists right there and the engineers right there, rather than kind of the massive production line that Seps actually is.
Yeah, as I said, you've done a fantastic job. Like, even
Oh,
like
thank you.
obviously we'll be talking about Lab of Legends quite a bit because that's like the main thing. But even just labs in general, like the design that goes into them and what you actually give as a different way of playing is just so nice and varied because it varies up because it's a nice little thing to do. Like if you've been on the ladder for a long time and like let's face it, sometimes you can get tilted or anything like that. It's just a nice thing just to go in and play the game in a different way and kind of clear the mind space. So
Yeah, I think card games generally are great because the cards are so flexible as game pieces, and so you can like set parameters a little bit differently, and suddenly you have this whole different experience using those same essential components. But very much it was conceptualized that labs would be this chance for us to really test things and not just do kind of game modes for the sake of game modes, although I think we've done a bunch of fun ones in that regard,
yeah,
but kind of do some experimentation and test things that might be a little bit longer term, might be like new mechanics for sets or things like Lab of Legends that are, you know, um, have found some footing and might stick around a little longer.
and obviously one of the big ones that you've done, like that you've experimented with a few times now, started obviously against the Noxian army, is like duos, the ability of two
Hmm.
players playing together, and then like as it went on slowly but surely, you've got it so that it's actually two people versus two people, and so a lot of experimentation looks like you guys have put into this. Now, I will say you don't have to answer this if you can't answer this, but
Okay.
is this like maybe gonna be a new game mode in the future in terms of duo mode, like duo ranked mode or duo queue mode in general?
So I think the thing I can say is
Yes.
that we are very interested in social like collaborative spaces. Players have consistently said it's something that they want to see. I was um, suspicious of how we would be able to do it with our game when people first started talking about it, but we've done all these different experiments in that vein, and certainly the space of collaborative experiences where you are playing with someone rather than against someone. I can bring a friend in, and like, it doesn't have to be I'm playing against them and we're antagonistic. That's a space that we are dedicated to. So exactly what form it'll take in the long term, I think, we've been running a lot of different experiments, obviously, but
Yes.
that part we're excited to continue.
Well, the very nice thing you did about the recent one was that you allowed people to obviously put in their decks, and then each person could play either person's decks. Like, there's
Hmm.
like so
Hmm.
if so that kind of also just like help the new player experience as well. Because say it's somebody who's been like an old school, like a bit been here since like a beta or whatnot, and then they've convinced they've rolled their friend, go, come on, you got to try this game. It's an amazing game, but they don't have the cards, and then to be like, well, let's jump into this mode because at least then you can try my decks that I know. Like I've got most of my I've got like most of all of my collection. Just face it, if you're in beta, you've got all your collection.
Oh yeah.
So you can try out and that was actually a really nice thing that you guys like added in as a thing, like being able to use each other's
Yeah.
decks.
Oh no, please go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was about to say, speaking from like personal experience, I have since the existence of duos managed to lure four of my close friends into Legends of Runeterra, and
Very nice.
because their big thing was I don't have a collection. I was like, you don't need one. You can just
use mine.
Because one of my friends, I'll leave names out. One of my friends, they started playing the game a while ago. And like you said, the experience was like pretty antagonistic. We were playing against each other. I had been playing for like 2 more months than him, and he just didn't feel motivated to build a collection. And he mentioned that when he saw the trailer for Targon, that Celestials looked cool. And I told him that there was there's a good Celestial deck in the meta, Dragons being kind of a Celestial deck, and does he want to try out the deck? And now he's hooked. He's just broken into Platinum 1, and he is talking about trying to compete for seasonals next time around.
We wish him luck.
Awesome. Yes, mysterious friend of yours.
Yeah. He knows who he is.
I assume you're not naming him because he's a celebrity, and that would be embarrassing.
No. I'm not naming him because he likes to be a chameleon on the internet. But
it was Brad Pitt, right?
Yeah. It was my good friend Tom Hiddleston and 3 other celebrities. Yeah.
So I totally agree with you. I think that card games, we have a game that is pretty complex and can be tricky to teach, and like if you want to get in and directly experience it with another person before you had to be antagonistic, and now just that notion that bring in someone new and you can share the experience and kind of coach them through or give them decks exactly like you're talking about is I totally agree with you. Something that's really special about social modes.
The thing about card games on the whole, and we have all been playing card games for a very, very long time. I assume I'm allowed to mention your past work, your previous employment.
I think that's fine, yeah.
Yeah. So you used to work for Wizards of the Coast, is that right? Lead designer on Conspiracy. Am I getting this right? Conspiracy, Battle Bond, Return to Ravnica. Was that one?
I wasn't the lead on that, but I was one of the first sets I worked on.
Yeah. Excellent sets, by the way. Conspiracy was my favorite set.
Thank you.
So, we've all been playing card games for a really, really long time, and in the past 15 odd years of playing card games, this is the first time I have been able to experience a card game in tangent with someone, because Hearthstone has nothing like that. Commander and Magic the Gathering doesn't quite get that same experience. This is the perfect game mode. No word of a lie. I love Duo Q so much.
I will pass those compliments along. Mark Sassenrath was the lead designer for the mode, so I will pass your compliments right along to him.
And say to him, if they do end up having a ranked mode, look out for the names Lan Up and Jankie, because we will be the duo team which ends up taking everything. So.
But we're here today to talk about Lab of Legends.
Yes.
And the changes you have made to Lab of Legends as of recently. And the thing that I want to know is, where does the inspiration for what was the headspace that you were in when it came to making Lab of Legends? Because it's freaking brilliant.
Oh, well, thank you. So it actually had a kind of very the origin space was actually thinking about power progression, and that they're really one of the things we love about the base game of lore is the really high card access that players have. But there's been a bunch of things that are kind of knock-on consequences of that, and one of them is we kind of have to have a certain flat power level. Players accumulate the cards quickly, so you don't ever really get that experience that you might in another card game of my deck started with weak cards and I slowly got to slot in stronger ones. And we were talking about how to create kind of a power fantasy where the player can walk through the experience and feel more powerful the further they get into it. And kind of from there got thinking about roguelike games that do that in a really quick loop, and thinking about some of the tools we would have available to us in doing that. Stickers is something what is called items in the game, and we have always called stickers because they've been a concept that have been floating around in conversations about modes since before the game launched.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they were in the original pitch for Expeditions, but more as like a mutator where what if sometimes instead
Okay.
of getting a card in one region, it shows up in a different region and you get kind of a novel experience that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what really got us started. And then from there, it was a lot of iteration on, what parts are working, what parts aren't working. And I should also acknowledge the Climb the Mountain experience that came before was the first attempt at single player. That was you're picking Leona and Diana and you're fighting your
Yes, yeah,
way.
I remember that. Yes.
And so that actually built a lot of the tools we needed to have single player. They used a bunch of the same ideas, the powers and things, but the stickers were really one that let us create this kind of it simultaneously gave us this granularity that I could have Garen, or I could have the cooler Garen that got +2/+2 or something, or suddenly as elusive and is a different, that recontextualizes the experience. And not only is it more powerful, but now I have this really unique thing that sent me on a totally different path than the one I was expecting to go on. And so a lot of it then was just building up from there. And yeah, it's been really exciting how immediately players were responding to it and taking to the mode, because it was again one of these little experiments that we weren't quite sure what we were going to do with, and so it's been very, very nice seeing players so excited about it.
I mean, it's a really great mode. You've done a fantastic job, with it. It's so
Oh,
fun
thank
to
you.
play as well. That's what makes it good. One of my questions was going to be, so what goes into whenever you so obviously you added new champions in,
Mhm.
and you added a bunch of new powers as well, that you can get in between the different regions. What goes into the design when you're designing a new power for it, in terms of
Yeah, so this might this is going to be pulling back the curtain a little bit, but when we were first when we did the initial release, we actually went through and kind of very roughly matched some of the powers to champions to
right?
make sure they all were supported decently well by the mode, and you could have something that you could be excited about among the powers. We in the first patch, where we added the difficulty levels and Talia, we didn't do that with Talia and kind of regretted
Hmm.
it
Yeah.
when she struggled through the mode. So with the most recent one, we again kind of we want them to be generally useful, so we tend not to make them very narrowly targeted at only one deck that then others wouldn't be excited about them. But we still want to make sure, if we're going to have a landmark champ, that we've got some landmark based powers to support them, and there's things that they can be excited to find among the powers. So that was actually a lot of the motivation with the individual powers.
Nice. And I would just like to just add on to that thing when you're talking about the things that you've added. The free re-rolls for the first one. Thank you so much. The amount of times when I would go and go, oh, no, these powers work. But I don't want to use one of my re-rolls. Quickly, end run, start run again. So thank you for that.
I could not tell you how many times I have heard Talia say her line about the tapestry. But when I was trying to complete heroic with Talia, and I was re-rolling over and over again. But that's just proof of concepts that you guys are so in tune to what the players are doing with your game mode. That's just a tiny change, a little detail that shows that our headspace as players.
Certainly, we do a lot of paying attention to players, and I'd seen a lot of requests for let us just choose the first power, let us, and there's a part of me that feels so mixed about it, because I'm like, oh, I think part of the fun of the mode is, sometimes you get something that you're not expecting, but boy, those higher difficulty levels get really tough. So it makes sense that we're doing a lot of re-rolling. And just this last week, we were looking at the data from it, and wow, there was a lot of re-rolling going on. And you see like the graph of the behavior, and then it plummets with the last one with the release. So certainly it is getting used, and yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy with the result. I think it's something, as we look at the mode longer term. What exactly we do with kind of the starting power and those things that like you have easy access to like that, because obviously there's still like it can take a while if you're looking for one thing to sit there and like click the reroll button. But I also like that it's not overwhelming you with like here's 35 choices or whatever. If you're the new person, that's pretty overwhelming. So I think there's a little bit of a balancing act to that, that we'll see as we continue to iterate with the mode.
I think that you've got the balance perfect, because what it allows is like, yeah, sure, it's going to take a little while to find the power that you want to start off with, but it's a lot less time than having to continuously, okay, can't find it, end run, start run again, hear voice line again, start, like, it's a lot more quicker, and like I said, also it allows people who just want to go, you know what, I want to go for a challenge. I'm not going to use the free reroll. I'm going to go. I'm going to go at this with whatever you give me. So it allows both forms of play, and that's what I like about that. Like keeping it as it is actually is quite nice.
No doubt, that people have been like speed running Lab of Legends, and I know there's speed run categories where people are using no rerolls at all. So if they were offered all 35 or whatever, like you said, options at the start, it would take away from that a little bit. So yeah, I also like where it is now.
I'm actually excited to hear more about the speedrun community. It's one I'm aware is going on, but I don't know the details of how they're doing it. I'll say the challenge that I give myself is whenever I get a champ power, I have to put it on my starter champ. I'm not allowed to cheat and not ignore Zillion or something.
Exactly.
That power's got to go on him.
It's his run. It's Zillion's run.
Exactly.
Zillion will be my main champ.
I can't just win every Lab of Legends with a 3/3 Zoe. I have to. Yeah.
But speaking of that, obviously, speaking of Zillion and whatnot, because it's one of those things where every single time when I pick Zillion, I'm like, I want to use his time bombs. I want to get that the extra thing, put him 4 in. But I know the second I get to Scars, things are going to go terribly wrong for me. So what I was wondering is there any thought in the future for changing up some of the bosses, like making it so that, because obviously I know that we've got like Shadow Isles, Freljord, and PNZ, but is there any kind of thing whereby in the future you're maybe like, I mean, yeah, again, if you can't say this, don't say it, but is there any thought in the future of maybe doing it so that each run is different, have a few champions from like each region and with like their respective followers, and it kind of randomly assigns them so you don't know who you're going to be up against until you go in there? Because although it is fun beating the hell out of Victor, I think that he's taken a lot.
Yeah, poor Victor. Won't someone think of him? So what I can say is that we are dedicated to the mode. So far, we've been doing pretty small updates to it. We've been adding more champs and a little bit more content, but we are dedicated to it more broadly. So there is some bigger experimentation going on behind the scenes.
Nice.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
You go, buddy, Bo.
No. Please, after you.
Okay. Well, all I was going to say was, in the initial decision, what made you choose Thrash, Sejuani, and Victor out of curiosity?
That's a great question.
That is a really great question. I need to rewind my brain back to
why did we choose these?
So we were trying to look at champs that could kind of we were doing to be honest, we were doing a lot of like exploration of just like what makes a good enemy power.
Right.
And we were trying that actually is one of the reasons you don't see more variety in there initially is it turned out to be very difficult. We tried a lot of powers that were overwhelming in one way or another. We had like a University of Piltover in there for a little while where it was just like completely chaotic. Which was really fun, but like really frustrating when they just spike things that you don't expect to see, and suddenly
I can imagine that.
Did that later turn into the Hex Core then?
Exactly. Yeah, it was that one exactly. Um, and there are a lot of variations on Thresh that we went through, but it was kind of just picking a combination of like who seemed like a decent villain to kind of be fighting against. We didn't want to do faces of like, probably you shouldn't be beating up against Lux if it's a AI or someone else like that. So we wanted characters who could uh, match with a good power that would be pretty interesting for them. I'm trying to think if we did big variations on any of the champs. Oh yeah, Callista was in there before Thresh for a while, and she had a really tricky play pattern where half the time she would be Callista would come out and do nothing. Should just be in there as like almost a vanilla body. And then half the time she would get into that state where she's completely protecting herself, and so we didn't like the swinginess of that. So it was kind of nice that Thresh is relatively like simple as far as a champ goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a little bit of experimentation like that, but largely we honed in on those particular champs pretty quick, even while we were really moving back and forth on their powers. And I'll say Victor for a long time had, in addition to his current text, it was when you summon an ally, give them a random grant them a random keyword. So
Oh.
also on top of that, he had these giant bodies that were coming out very quick, and so I know there's a little bit of a meme of him being weaker than the two before him, but at that point he was just a smashing because he'd be dropping these 5/5s very aggressively and overwhelming you quick. And I'm happy that we found a balance point for him where you need to think about him, but he's not
armed gear hand, or was that his name? Armed gear
gearhead.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, would be a 1-cost 4/4. That's it's
Mhm,
like that.
mhm.
Drops with scout or something.
Yes, you can see the problem with that immediately. Yeah.
Are there any other iterations of like the game mode that we never got to see? Is there other stuff you can tell us about that? Like going through the design phases, like what stuff never made it to live,
That's the. Let me think
or at least
through.
what you can remember.
Yeah, well, it's often we have such long lead times with sets and things that I'm pulling my mind back 2 years or something. This was just end of 2020, and I'm like, what else did we do there?
Yeah, I mean, other stuff did happen in that year. That is fair.
Yeah, I mean,
That's true.
I think a lot of
Um,
our minds can't cast ourselves back that easily then.
um, so I think the other element that we had explored a little bit is some layers of like meta progression, of like what if some of the things stick around run to run, and you're able to then match that with the higher difficulty levels, to now you are more equipped to take on the next difficulty level because you've gotten bonuses that persist.
Right.
That's that was a pretty fun idea that was being explored. But with the initial launch, we weren't able to fit the additional difficulty levels in there, and I've really enjoyed those. That was all. Xian Li is the other designer who works with me a lot on the
Oh,
mode,
nice.
and she really owned that release and put in those additional difficulty levels. So you can blame her for Foundry and those round ones where you're getting smashed for, or I guess round twos where you're getting smashed for
I
20
didn't
damage.
realize.
Von Yip, when Von Yip drops, suddenly like all of these Jerry bots come out and or Jerry rigs, and
Uh-huh.
everyone's just like, okay, well I'm done.
You know that scene in like Western movies where like the cowboy walks into the bar and like the music stops, and like I was doing my first heroic run ever, and I was pretty confident the bosses weren't that difficult, and then Von Yip appears on turn 1, and they used their 1 cost and their 0 cost,
Uh-huh.
the board is completely full, and it felt like the record had just scratched, and then, like, and then next round it was Heimerdinger. I was like, I've never seen Victor's unit. I don't know what he starts with. I've never made it that far.
Yeah, those final levels are tough. That was actually another one that required some iteration. Was for a while the top level, it started with 1 extra mana. However, we had gotten a bug put into that accidentally had gotten put into the AI during that time, where it was very conservative with playing its cards, essentially. And
Okay.
so we'd done a lot of testing. Mainly, Shion had done a lot of testing with that highest difficulty level, and we thought we'd gotten it to a good point. And then the engineers said, "Oh, we fixed this bug with the AI," and it was devastatingly difficult, and like it was just like soul crushing how strong it was once it didn't have this weird, effectively the AI thought like, oh, I want to save my mana whenever I can, and so it really was slow in doing things. And then
We'll just hit
we
with
had to
everything.
do a last minute switcheroo with its power at the top level, because it was just
what
too
if
too
instead
much.
of banking my spell mana, I played a 1-mana 4/4?
Yeah, exactly.
So it was like wasn't it Gandhi in one of the Civilization games who, when he was on like the hardest
Oh yeah.
difficulty, he would he would just go to maximum aggression or something and just
Yeah,
like
yeah,
yeah.
There was some
Gandhi has
bug where
declared nuclear war.
I think there was some bug where it looped around peaceful all the way to warlike again, or something like
Yeah,
that.
because
Yeah.
when he got on, he went -1, but because he was on the lowest, it went to the maximum, which was 10, and so it just instantly just came at you in the end. Aggression on full. I can't wait for when you add the power. It's basically like the power that is Lost Riches of. Just shuffle, just at the start of the game, shuffle some treasures, like 2 treasures, or even 1 treasure into.
that'd be good
That's
fun.
the power that I'm looking forward to. That's like if that eventually comes.
Fill your deck with treasures, sure.
Exactly.
I'll tell you one that didn't work out, that we were doing kind a little bit for Zillion, was every round shuffle an epic into your deck, and
Ooh.
it sounds really cool, and like you'd get we expected all this variety and things, and then it dilutes your stickered cards, and sometimes you're getting just weirdo things that like show up, and
Skies
so
descend.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
things you
Shadow
can't
Flare or whatever
use.
it is.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird epics in LOR.
Yeah, so that was one that I was excited about and was very sad when that didn't work out. But yeah, that's actually one we've gone through a lot of powers that have gotten cut over time.
In the game's history, you were talking about how like there's been occasions where you've like added stuff to the game and then it's like been taken out, or I don't know if you're okay to answer this, but is there any stuff that's been added to the game and is currently live that you regret being there? Like, is there anything about the game mode that as is right now that you don't really like?
That's an interesting question. So I'll tell you one that's like a challenge that we've been dealing with. I don't know quite that it's something I don't like, but it's something as we look toward the future we're going to need to deal with. That right now there's a lot that points you to play more aggressively. Some of that's on the difficulty levels of like things like Foundry and these encounters that you have to play through that have just like incredible out the gate pressure. But also stickers as a system just naturally lends itself towards putting them on smaller cards, or sorry, lower cost cards. So like, a 1-drop with a +2/+2 sticker is probably doubling its power. Getting that +2/+2 on Zoe is just like, okay, now you've got this like hammer. But if you put a +2/+2 on, say, Aurelian Soul, like that's a drop in the bucket. And so I think long term, something we have to figure out how to deal with is how do we make slower champs more viable? We've started experimenting, I'd say, a little bit with some of the powers in the latest release. You saw things like the frostbite power. That's a pretty strong one that naturally lends itself to going into a little bit of a longer game. But the sticker system, I think, like the challenge to it generally is that how much it like pushes you in an aggro direction, and I think that's something that like as we want to incorporate more champions and more variety of experiences, we're going to need to come up with a solve for to prevent it from, everything, kind of converges on get as many stickers on Zoe as you can and win as fast as possible.
The power you just add a power to the game which simply says all of your 5+ cards now just cost 5.
Don't. You know what you're making reference to. You've just given me PTSD. That was the worst time in Hearthstone's history. Please.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah. Nagasi Witch pre-rework.
That's the one.
Good lord.
That's the one.
But if you're, if it's something you only have access to and your opponent doesn't,
true.
That does change what's fun. That's actually been one of the parts that's been a joy for me in making working on some of the powers and things. Is you don't, so much of the work of cards goes into like what is the interesting counterplay here? Is this too complex if it's across the table? How do we create these interesting dynamics? And like the AI exists to be beat up. So, if we do something like whenever you summon a 5+ power unit, it strikes the weakest enemy. There's not even like the skill pog in the middle to like give them a response window. It just happens. Like those are delightful to be able to do because the AI exists to get beaten and to be an interesting opponent, but you don't need to think about counterplay to every single thing that you're making. So that's been a really fun part of working on the game mode.
Yeah, in single player, you don't have to worry about one player leaving the experience upset. Like, you only.
We
have to
don't know what the
player.
computer feels.
Well, we have a pretty good insight.
We just needed to start emoting at you that it's
that would be brilliant.
Why did they program me to make me feel pain?
if the AI starts emoting like responsively to my emotes, that would be perfect. If that was an actual feature, oh golly, that would double the experience.
Mel Lee, who's another designer who works on the mode a little bit, describes like good enemy design is theater, that you want them to seem scary, you want them to do all these threatening things, but also you want the player to have the ability to overcome the things that they're doing. And so I've liked that a lot as a philosophy for this, because you don't need to, they don't need to play fair, but some of the time the best ones are when it looks really scary, but also you've given them like some weakness that the player can exploit, or like the thresh power, I think is a good one, where we, in the first design for that, the chain of units that it could summon went all the way up to 8 or 9 mana, and it got Commander Lidros, and that was you really needed to learn to like stop the chain as it went, but also like it would kill its own thresh along the way, and we were like, no, this is not fun. You have to like race this. Let's just lead this up to thresh. You still get the fun of like breaking it. And I've seen players at times say like, hey, this could be more synergistic and like take advantage of this landmark better. And I'm like, no, that's not the point. The point is
the landmark is free.
it's free, and also like the role the AI plays here is being a good opponent. It's not trying to maximize its win rate.
Yeah. I mean, calling it theater is a good way of looking at it. I like that when balancing cards for ladder, etc. Like the example I would probably use is like Karma or something. Like when Karma reaches Enlightened and you're casting all your spells and they're going off twice, it's one of the most exciting play experiences for the person on the Karma side, and one of the most monotonous experiences for the people having to watch you play the game. But removing that aspect must make design a little more freeing.
Yeah, certainly. It's really satisfying being able to like embrace like what are fun things to do on your side that the opponent wouldn't want to sit through, and what can we remove as things that the opponent could do that you now no longer need to deal with. So yeah, that's been very satisfying.
So as the game mode like extends into the future, you say you've got we have like the three labs that are rotating, right?
Mhm.
Is Lab of Legends like evergreen? Is it going to stay as we go through the rotations?
Um,
Is that a right test?
for the
Yeah.
foreseeable future.
Okay.
It's I don't know long term. The two things I can say are we're very dedicated to like having PvE single player and doing more experimentation there. And for right now, yeah, Lab of Legends is the test bed for all of those things.
I'm in the position right now where I'm like looking at the labs and there's the three rotating labs and two of them are like my favorite game modes right now and I'm sitting here butt clenched like hoping that it doesn't rotate too much.
And I'll say I love Earth mode, so that's one
Yeah.
I'm happy to play all day long. Just give me that maximum variance.
Earth is like medicine for tilt. It's like the Earth mode is like if you take tilt to like its natural end state and just like nothing matters anymore and it's only high rolls, like you can't get mad about your opponent's high rolling in a game mode designed to high roll. It's like it's like the ultimate tilt medicine. 5 minutes of Earth and you're ready to go back on ladder. Gomez.
Yes, sorry. So yeah, again, we're getting back to Lab of Legends. So we saw you add new champions to the mode.
Mhm.
What is the process in terms of like how do you decide like which champions to add next? What is it like or do you like so? I'm guessing you might even already know who the next ones are going to be after this. But what is it that makes you go, okay, right? So we're going to choose Fizz, Lysandra, and like what is the thing that goes? We're
Yeah.
choosing those.
So so some of them were easy because we wanted to get the new champs in the mode and kind of get the latest hotness in there.
Right.
And then we were trying with the rest of it to roughly remain like keep some degree of balance between the different regions, and for the different regions for the starter champs, just to have that level of variety. And then there's a few champs that like we know are going to be trickier to add to the mode. So, Nautilus would be a pretty tricky starting champ, for example, because
Yeah.
he cares so much about deck size, and the fact that it changes in the course of your run really, would affect that experience pretty heavily. Um, so there's a few like that we're trying to dodge, and then after that it's a little bit of a matter of like, does this bring a unique gameplay that we think we could do a good job with. you know Fizz, we've had the Heimer kind of spell deck before, but actually the Fizz, playing like where Heimer wants expensive spells, Fizz wants very cheap bursty spells, and so we were excited to kind of explore that direction instead. And so it's kind of a mix of having some hard constraints that you're working with, like the regions, and then some that are kind of looking at what remains from the options and saying like, okay, this would be fun for us to do. Lysandra was kind of that, where I think we could have put Trundle in the mode as well, but we've done champs that kind of have the shape of Trundle, where Lysandra was actually like, oh, okay, she's doing something very different than we've done before. Let's see if we can make something like this work more like a control deck work in the mode. And so, it's a mix of constraints. I think like over time we're going to need to learn how to do some of the weirdos, how to get Nautilus into the mode, or Maokai into the mode, or Fiora. I'm kind of terrified at like how
Oh, Fiora in there.
because if the AI can, it's both unsatisfying if the AI doesn't play around her, and unsatisfying if it does. So we'll need to figure that out. But yeah, it's just a mix of hard constraints and soft constraints, and figuring out like what looks fun.
So would you say as the game mode as the game mode tends towards infinity, you want there to be like a 1-to-1 match between champions of the game and champions in the game
I
mode?
won't go that far.
No.
What I will say is when we selected the initial champs, we were thinking of ones that would have like maximum flexibility for the mode, and we thought that was going to be the sweet spot. Let's not get more niche champs in there. And then as we've done more releases, the producers kind of said like, yeah, why don't let's get the newest champs in here, and uh, you know we figured out how to handle more champs than we could before. So like over time, I think the mode can accommodate more champions. I'm hesitant to say every champion will end up in there because we haven't tried it yet with Fiora, so I don't know if that's going to be like an incredible constraint. But
But those cool
certainly we want to.
icons.
What's that?
But those cool
that's a good point.
icons.
Never
Those
be able
cool
to get a full
icons,
collection
like
of icons.
Well, I really don't want to also say it won't happen.
Yeah, no, I can understand.
But
I can understand.
yeah.
Yeah.
Currently, I can't say one way or the other what
Yeah.
that looks like long term.
But thank you for. But I know that I'm guessing that Heimer was one of the first choices, not only because he's got a very interesting playstyle, but because he is the face of labs in terms of the whole thing is it's highlight Heimer's labs thing. So thank you so much, because as somebody who loves playing Heimer decks, like it's one like he's like my main in terms of decks. I always have to build a new Heimer deck. That icon of his goggles has been my icon. Second that labs became a thing, finished it, got it, equipped it, never unequipped it. And he was the first one. The second that you guys included difficulties, I was like, I'm beat. Like I'm not going to touch all the other champions until Heimer has hit this legendary. Damn well he did.
And he's a challenging champ to win with at times. So
oh, if you know what you're doing with the man.
An expert of the yordle.
Exactly. Honestly, yes. So thank you for that, because that is my icon has been the best for ages. So thank you.
Well, Rob Brown did all of the icons for the game. He is a fantastic artist who's been with the game for a while, and so all his doing.
Well, wait, every icon for the game mode or every icon for the game?
Well, every icon for the game mode.
Okay. I was about to say.
Yeah. There's a lot of artists in the game at large.
Holy mo, yeah.
He is just a concept artist who has been with the game since at least as long as I've been here. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's still
to be fair. All of the artists on the game looks beautiful. Like just the artwork, but not only that, even the animations as well that happen. Like all look amazing. So honestly, the team does a fantastic job. Just want to throw that out there, just let you know.
I'll say it's one of my favorite parts as a designer is especially working on cards. You've dealt with things where like it has a goofy playtest name and you're dealing with it without any art for a long time, and then suddenly like these sketches will come in, and then the card will have art, and like this thing that feels so abstract to be working on suddenly like, oh, it's real now, and someone's made it beautiful. This goofy concept that we did now suddenly has this very buff squirrel in the artwork or something, and you made that real.
That's a good question. Is there any cards that you've worked on in design, like in terms of you've just seen the name, you've had to work on them? Is there any cards where when the artwork or the voice lines have come in, you were just like, I was not expecting that?
Oh, I mean, Swole Squirrel is one that prominently did that for me, where I was not expecting that concept. Or Boxtopus is probably the other one. I was going to say
Boxtopus with the Ear Punch Pablo. I was going to say the voice line. Second it hits, it's like, oh my god, where's this come from?
Yeah, those ones were just delightful. I mean, I love the playfulness of the narrative and the art teams that they can deliver on bizarre, goofy concepts like that and make it seem part of this world.
Yeah, after like having a history and working in paper card games, it must be such a culture shock working with Legends of Runeterra and having the cards that are designed come so much more to life than they would in any other game.
Oh yeah, I mean having the VO and everything I mean so much of it like I was saying, is like you're as a designer, you are working with them largely as kind of these abstract entities, but having the champs and the whole their history and their stories, and then introducing these new characters, you get emotional resonance to things that otherwise might be kind of abstract mechanical cards. And so like having that be able to breathe life into these things is just absolutely a delight as a designer.
One of the big pulls to the game for me is like
Mm.
just how alive it is. It's
Hmm.
like MTGA could never.
um I was thinking about this actually the other day as I was playing just over the weekend, and um, had the game on mute, and I was like, oh, I need to turn the sound on just to get that sense of like the characters interacting and things. Like I was missing that as I was playing it there with no sound on.
If Boxtopus isn't shouting profanities at me,
Yeah,
every Legends
what
of
exactly.
Runeterra, how am I meant to know that I'm a wee scruff?
But yes, I was going to say, literally, such a fantastic job on that, and that's the reason why, like, I know that Jankie comes from a very similar thing to me in terms of the fact that I played Hearthstone for like 5 years, and second that I picked this up in open beta, I've not actually opened Hearthstone again since. I just fell in love with the game, the artwork, the actual way that the game works in terms of the fact that you get to have like reactions to what you like as your
Mm.
opponent's playing a card, immediately being able to react to that, and just the whole game just it feels so nicely polished and true. It's been a while since open beta, and so we're getting, obviously, like, as the new cards and the team gets like a
Mhm,
better at doing things, we're getting better animations and whatnot. And there's
mhm,
some
mhm,
animations which maybe might need a little bit of love from the past in terms of
mhm,
when you're seeing some of these like amazing things happen, and then you just see Timo just waddle around like,
Yeah.
on the screen.
Just you,
So
yeah, you saying earlier that Lab of Legends like came to be as like a side effect of you wanting the players to have a experience of progression,
mhm.
because most players get a full collection like almost immediately, is like the definition of suffering from success. And just coming from Hearthstone and Magic the Gathering and any other card game really, and like experiencing Legends of Runeterra and its free to play model, and like the fact that there was a necessity to make an entire game mode to counteract just how free to play friendly the game is crazy to me. That's a really fun tidbit.
Oh well, thank you. It's I've been delighted to work on the mode, so it is. Yeah, but I know what you mean. There's a lot of things from some of that core DNA of what Legends of Runeterra is, and especially like the high access model that have had some interesting knock on effects of like, okay, now we're designing for a flatter power level because it's not inherently about chasing after the epics or something like that, and so and like, oh, actually it's a challenge to design for this flatter power level. And I'm sure as I say that, people are complaining about the meta or something where things are more or less powerful right now, but yeah, it is nice to be freed from some of those constraints, like I was saying, to be able to work on this game mode.
We could talk. We could speak the what's the word? Oh, what's the expression? How does the expression go? We could speak
the day
sing the song
away.
of sing the song of Runeterra or whatever. Like when you've got nothing but compliments. What is that expression?
Praises, sing praises.
Spring. Yeah, we could sing praises for
Those are the
Legend.
words.
Thanks very much.
Don't worry, anytime.
We could sing praises to Legends of Runeterra like actually all day. But unless Gomez, do you have any more questions regarding the
Well,
labs
the
themselves?
the only one thing that I do want to add is because obviously, like, you did mention right at the very beginning a little
Mm,
tiny bit about expedition mode and like how like there was
mm,
like a little bit of that. One thing that I would like, because like, yeah, again, I am somebody who loves expedition mode. I love
mhm.
like every aspect of this situation. What I was gonna say is, will there ever be, or like, is there the possibility of like re rolls just on the champions, like, but only 3 rerolls at the beginning, like, in terms of in the future, or just passing that along to,
I
passing
feel
that
like
down the pipeline.
That will. Is there a chance? And by that I mean I'm asking you.
That's the word.
Have you considered this one specific request?
That's the one.
We haven't really we've had vague conversations about like what the future of expeditions look like, but no specific plans like that right now.
That's fair enough. I can understand. I just love the mode so much.
He just wanted to get that in there before he finished up.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I had to. I would have hated myself if I didn't.
So I believe that is us trailing to an end.
Indeed. Yeah, so thank you for being a guest on here as well. Thank you for taking the time out of your day, because you've got, I'm sure, a very busy schedule and everything like that in front of you. So thank you for taking the time out.
It's absolutely my pleasure. I've said this before, but it because there's always such long lead time and you're working, in secret for a long time. It is actually a delight to be able to come on and tell design stories and things, because at the end of the day, if I'm feeling like proud of like solving a tricky design problem or something, I can't share that with friends. So it's always nice 6 months later to be able to recount these stories and share them. So my absolute pleasure.
It's an honor to have you on, and like again, it's like no other company would do this. Like no other company would like give us the time of day. So we really do appreciate you coming on and like representing the company and like interacting with the community like you do.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure.
Gomez, do you want to do the wrap up or?
Okay, well, I will just say this, like, again, thank you so much to Shawn, and hopefully, at maybe one point in the future, if he's ever got free time again, like, we'd love to have you on again to ask like questions. Obviously, like, in the future, we'll see what happens with labs and whatnot, and if there's any time, we'll go, we need to ask that man about this.
Yeah, well, in 6 months, 8 months or whatever, we can recount this podcast and be like, remember when we asked if you do this, and then you did.
And I'll get to say, like, at that time we were doing X, and I had to bite my tongue. Yeah.
But honestly, thank you so much to our guest, Shawn. And yes, remember, you can catch the Voice of the Old Ones Legends of Runeterra podcast on Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube. I think I've got them all covered, haven't I, Jankie? Is there anywhere else where we are?
That is the 3 locations you can find us, as
Fantastic.
Well as in sunken ships, in sunken vessels. If you like rub certain pearls, then you can.
The genie comes out of the bottle and he says the things.
Yes.
But yes, and also you can catch me and Jankie on our own YouTubes and Twitches. The links will be down below. Is there any links that you'd like us to put on for you at all, Shawn? Like, you don't have to have any if you don't want any, like your Twitter hand or anything, but do not feel you have to.
People are welcome to follow me on Twitter at Shawn Main. But yeah.
You know what? I'll do that right now.
You're not already following the man? But honestly, yes.
I think I actually am.
It's a lot of photos of my cats and
excellent
random posts from my own runs of Lab of Legends.
No, I mean, to be fair, some of them are crazy, so check that out, people, if you haven't already. But thank you so much for listening. Hopefully catch you on the next one. And until next time, goodbye.
Goodbye.